Team Liquid's 2021 roster just kind of states that essentially they believe that you can never have enough horsepower. Now, I equate this to how tuning a car works, and maybe this analogy will be lost on most of you, but fuck all you. Anyways, usually when an owner says that, they want the tuner who is tuning their car on a dynograph, that they want more horsepower or whatever, right? And it's like, yeah, just crank up the numbers, whatever, dude. Yeah, just I want to get the most horsepower out of my engine, blah blah blah. And then the person on the dyno, the tuner, then goes, either you're a fucking idiot and I'm not doing that and I'm not blowing up your engine, or fuck it, whatever you want, and it comes with the hazards of that, and that I could possibly blow up your engine because now we're pushing out too much horsepower in detriment to the components that are in your engine that aren't just strong enough, right? You probably didn't buy enough strong components, simplistically. And so this is kind of what Team Liquid is doing in that sense, right? It's like you already had this fucking sick engine, it had like 500 horsepower or whatever, and now you want to try and run 700 horsepower, right? Like you just want to change some of the internals or whatnot, and you just want to see how much you can eke out of this fucking project car, right? And that's why I say, and many people say within the tuner world, that a project car is never done, because it never truly is. You just keep going that extra mile and that extra mile because you're a fucking idiot and you want more horsepower, and you're just not satisfied with, 400 horsepower. So you go to 500. You're not satisfied with 500. So you go to 600, and so on and so forth. And it just becomes this ridiculous number that you keep on chasing. And now I can kind of see in a sense as to why billionaires aren't satisfied with where they're at, or millionaires aren't satisfied with where they're at. I guess that'd be a little bit more appropriate. And it's just maybe human psychology to where you have to go in for more and more and more, and you buy in for more and more and more. And the numbers don't necessarily matter. It's just that you maybe have a higher number than someone else, or, you're just trying to reach this peak idea of what it is to have maybe the ultimate engine or whatnot. So now compare this all to Team Liquid. Team Liquid has a roster of Alfari, top lane, Santorin, jungle, Jensen, mid, Tactical, bot lane, and Core JJ as support. Now, we can already see this roster is fucking stacked. Like, my God, if you could create a super team in that sense and yet still kind of have a rookie player, to kind of balance things out to where you don't fall into that super team territory to where everyone is trying to fight for all the resources and whatnot, and everyone's all greedy as fuck. This is a really good team. And also, if you think of it from multiple different positions on the map, you have a lot of players that have the skills of a superstar, but don't necessarily have the attitude of a superstar, right? That's what makes this team so fucking brilliant, which is why the engine may not blow up from this much horsepower, right? As I like to put it. So let's go from the top lane. Alfari. Obviously, Alfari is coming out from the LEC. He's an import. Now, the crazy thing about Alfari is that he's a type of top laner that can play both tanks and carries, right? He's kind of like an Impact 2.0, I guess. And that, first, I want to put the caveat that I think Impact, throughout his entire career, I don't think he's got a proper chance to play carries in the traditional sense that people will continuously kind of rely on him to play carries. Yeah, there will be the spurses and whatnot to where they kind of sprinkle that in and say, yeah, Impact, you could have, this Jax game, or you could have this Jace game or whatever. And he'll completely, shit on people with that, but then they'll revert back to this old style or whatnot. And also in tune with that, maybe because they weren't comfortable playing in that style, because it's completely different in that sense, especially playing towards the top lane. I think playing top lane carries is untraditional to North America, right? That's why North America is so very uncomfortable, like playing, this split push style and whatnot, which North America used to be known for, of course, with CLG and whatnot. But it seems like it just got a little bit too complicated. And also, to be fair, the meta didn't necessarily necessitate that idea, or I guess make it a little bit more provocative in that sense, to where you could actually do that and maybe it would be more of a viable strategy than it currently is, or I guess previously was, right, in 2020. So back to Alphari. Alphari, he could split push, or he could team fight. If he wants to bust out the cannon, he could do that shit. Essentially, he's supposed to be the more carry-oriented Impact. Now, that's funny, given that was what TL thought about Broxa, and that, Brox is supposed to be the carry-oriented Xmithy, right? It's like he's just up a little notch above Xmithy, right? Well, it turns out he fucking wasn't. So now you have this whole kind of hodgepodge, I guess, to where TL probably paid similar amounts of money for Alphari as they would have for Impact previously. Now, when you think about Alphari as a top laner, you're just like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, what the fuck is he doing over in goddamn LCS? I thought we were supposed to be importing, people like Perks, people like, I don't know, trying to get fucking Caps or something, or Reckless or whatever. Like, why are we getting this 10th place guy? You got to understand that he was voted All-Pro, first All-Pro top laner in 2020 Summer Split. That's got to be saying something. That means that you are a standout motherfucker. Actually, I don't even think that this has happened in the history of the LCS or the LEC ever. I don't think that's ever actually happened. Since at least All-Pro has existed, right? I think the closest thing that you could come to that would be Lyra, right? When he was over in Team Envy, right? Other than that, there's no one else that could even come close to that kind of accolade, I guess you could say. So I guess before you dog him in that sense, just remember that he was a very good top laner within 2020. People respected him. Analysts respected him. Other top laners respected him. It just, his team didn't work out. They even had some good players on that team. The team synergy didn't work out. And certainly he overshone everyone else and showed that he was still a very good player in that sense. So Alphari, I think it's a good pickup. I'm not saying that it's necessarily better than Impact. It's just on how maybe you want to use Alphari. And also there's going to be that honeymoon idea, to where now you have this refreshed idea that Alphari can play more carry-oriented champions than Impact can. So you're going to try that style maybe a little bit more and see if that works. And it's kind of like a fallacy in that sense, that since you believe it so hard, then it's gonna come true just because you believe it. But if you would have just believed in it with Impact, it might have also became true as well. So then we go to Santorin, right? Santorin, obviously, let's be real at this point. He is Xmithy 2.0, right? Like, yeah, fuck all the bullshit when I said Alphari is supposed to be Impact 2.0. Santorin is supposed to be Xmithy 2.0, and I think actually that he is. And it's kind of funny that TL essentially is all these 2.0 players, right? It's like, yeah, we have Alphari, we have Santorin, we even have Jensen to a certain extent, to other mid lane pros. It's like, yeah, like this is like the whole, I guess, upgraded version, after you unlock them at a certain level or some shit. I don't know. Maybe Team Liquid has just reached level 30 and unlocked a new fucking rune page or something. Shout out to all the old fogies out there. Anyways, so now Santorin, I think what he's going to bring a lot, and now this is going to be the weird thing, is I don't know if his idea of level ones were just himself, or if it was based upon his coaching staff, because I know Coach Curry liked to do a lot of wacky things within the draft and whatnot. So I'm not sure how much influence Coach Curry had in that sense, but I feel it was like a significant amount. And then given the assertiveness of Solo himself too, calling Santorin up into the top lane sometimes or whatnot, I feel like maybe in this sense, Team Liquid isn't going to get the package that they necessarily expect with his eccentric level 1 pathings or level 2 pathings or level 3 pathings, right? So I'm not sure where that's going to lead, but I do have kind of high hopes just because Santorin is a veteran in that sense, and maybe he kind of lets on that he's more placated in the sense that he lets other people lead him more than he leads the team himself in that sense in the very early game. So maybe that is the case. And I kind of feel like I should give him the benefit of the doubt in that sense. And I hope other people will too, because he is clearly a very intelligent jungler. And also, you don't do those particular routes just because someone says that you need to do this, unless you're just a complete pushover. I think with his type of experience, he's come to the point to where he kind of can't not be, this aggressive type of jungler in that sense, or at least someone that knows kind of what their own game plan is in that sense and what they want to do in the early game. So I feel like part of his identity was also shown through the FlyQuest squad. So I think he'll bring a little bit of that flavor, which obviously Team Liquid was missing. They were missing that whole level 1 type idea. They were missing the whole idea of the early game and whatnot and how to get things snowballing and whatever. So I feel like Santorin is going to kind of breathe that lifeblood into them in that sense. So I'm very excited for that. I think this is actually a phenomenal pickup, especially over someone like Broxa, who that they thought was going to be very mechanical, maybe a little bit more aggressive than Xmithy, but not too much, right? They don't want too much of that flavor in that sense. They don't want it to go all the way over to like a Yankos category or whatnot. They just want a little bit of that flavor, a little bit of that Tabasco in that sense. So I think with kind of putting in Santorin, it is going to give that Tabasco, it is going to give that sauce to that dish. But it's not going to be overwhelming in that sense. And I feel like Team Liquid is that traditional team, especially being that they're coached by Jat, who's more of a analytical step-by-step process coach. At least that's what he seemed to me to be last year. And just listening from him from the analyst desk and maybe his flavors of what he actually likes from teams throughout the years is that I feel like he does like a process team rather than something that is more flamboyant in that sense and likes to do things maybe a little bit like abstract and whatnot, which I think, to be fair, Santorin is going to bring a little bit of that flavor. So I'm excited for that. Jensen now is the best mid laner in LCS. Well, I guess now he's the second best mid laner in the LCS. Some would say that he was also always the second best LCS mid laner, but those people were just fucking delusional. Anyways, Jensen still at the top of his game, still going to do very well, still going to crush people. I don't think he has any realistic competition. Some people would say, yeah, maybe, you give him the right day and Power of Evil can kind of overtake him and whatnot. And yeah, I think if Jensen has a bad day and Power of Evil has a good day, right, then yeah, that can very well happen. But both of those things need to happen. So Jensen, overall, I don't have much to say to him. Good player, right? Tactical, proved to be of tougher fucking stuff at Worlds. Like, my God, this guy was kind of impervious to pressure in that sense. Now, that also is with the caveat that there was no crowd. There was no real big stage, right? Yeah, that millions of eyes are watching you on screens and whatnot, but it's kind of not the same thing in that sense. But with that said, he did prove that, at least he can handle the pressure in some sense. And he was one of the actually better performing players on Team Liquid at Worlds. So I feel like tactical is nothing to worry about at this point. And as we all know, generally in like the traditional sense, sophomore year of a rookie is actually supposed to be kind of good in the sense, especially if you're playing ADC, right? A role that doesn't change necessarily that much. Now that is to be determined, given that all the items and everything, and it seems like we're going back to lethality ADCs and whatnot, and so it's a little bit too early to tell, I guess, especially for that role specifically, and if he has to change up his style in that regard. But I don't see too many problems, especially guided by my man's Core JJ. Now, Core JJ, obviously, we all know he's by far the best support in the entire league. He has been. He probably will be, to be honest. It seems like he's kind of in his prime too now, and he just seems to be on point quite a lot. And then I don't know if you guys have gotten into peek to some of the solo or in-houses that he's been doing over on Twitch and whatnot, cast by like Captain Flowers and I Will Dominate and Zyrene and shit like that, is that he seems to be very vocal and he knows what he wants to do on the map and when he wants to do it, and he kind of always has a plan in mind in that sense. So that gives me an idea to where he's the kind of support player that knows exactly how to lead his team to a victory in that sense, right? There are a lot of players that maybe they know step 1 or step 2 or step 3, but they don't know step 7, which is the goal, or step 9, which is the end goal in that sense. And if you have that end goal in mind, then you can kind of formulate your path over towards that, and that seems to be what Core JJ has in mind. So I think if Team Liquid are able to allow Core JJ to be this hive mind guy, I guess, then maybe the team can work in this sense, because I feel like there isn't much voice, when I think about this team. And with that said, I think that the coaching staff also need to be able to shape the identity of this team, because when you look at all the players and whatnot, there can be a lack of vocality. Is that even a fucking word? A lack of voice on this team, in the sense that you have Santorin, more of a reserve player, Alfari. To be honest, I haven't listened to a whole lot of Alfari's comms and whatnot. And then you have Jensen, who might be vocal in post game, but doesn't seem to be very vocal in the actual game. And then you have Tactical as a rookie, right? So you have to have Core JJ kind of step up as a leader in this sense. And hopefully Team Liquid has realized that he can do this. And I'm pretty sure that Core JJ could do this as well too. So I don't think that this is that much of a gamble. But in that sense, I do realize that this is more of a burden on the coaching staff, in that sense of how do they want to form the team's identity, in the sense of what lanes do we play with, who's the superstar of the team, right? Like who is kind of the diva / superstar, right? Who kind of needs the ball in that sense. Maybe someone who needs a little bit more moral support, so that maybe we have to play towards his lane a little bit more and kind of adjust our style in that sense. Who's a little bit more uncomfortable with playing with the ball, So it seems like the coaching staff are going to have a lot to do with how this roster shapes out, not because it's necessarily a super team in that sense, but kind of because it is a super team in that sense. Just more so with passive personalities, to where they're going to have to egg them on and give them a direction in that sense. Now, with that said, I think picking up Cold, as I've said before in some of these previous videos about me talking about preseason roster changes and whatnot, is that picking up Cold is a good idea in the general sense that you do want a former player as an assistant coach. I think this is a formula that's going to be picked up on more and more and more, because that's someone that can guide the micro aspect of the game, right? and someone that can point out mistakes of how you maybe misrepresented your champion, or maybe you should have done this at level 1 or level 2, or maybe you should have gone this route instead of this route, right? Because Cold was a jungler previously, or Trashy as he was known back in the day, right, in Splice. So this is going to kind of give a little bit more solid feeling within the team, and also a little bit more rigidity in the backbone, in the sense that the players can now relate to someone more intimately on the coaching staff, right? And yeah, of course, we all know that Jat played jungle way back in the day, but that was way back in the day. So I think Cold is just, he's going to be a very clutch just assistant coach in that sense. Now, and that's not so much in relying to him as a player, but just, as I said, the general idea of having an assistant coach that was a former player. Overall, ironically, I think this team is going to be determined on foundation for identity from the coaching staff and from Core JJ. As I said before, I think that's where they get their fundamentals. That's where they get the stability to know exactly who they're playing through, or what their win conditions are and whatnot. So I think that kind of supplements the assertiveness that maybe that this team might lack in that sense, right? That is what a coach can supplement in that sense, right? Is assertiveness, in the sense that they don't have to be assertive because they already know that the coach gave them this game plan to say, you guys are kind of playing through towards this lane, or maybe this side of the map, or maybe through the jungle or whatnot. So just kind of keep that in mind as you go out throughout the game. And if things change drastically, yeah, like kind of use your intuition in that sense. But this is how I want the general game to kind of flow. This is what this draft is oriented towards. I want you to play towards these win conditions and always keep those in mind. So I think essentially Team Liquid is going to do really well this season. They obviously have a superstar team, and with some voices that don't necessarily need to be divas, or voices that, you know, don't necessarily need to have all the resources at once and whatnot. Players that could play weak side, strong side, whatever. So I think overall this is just a really good mix of players. But as I said before, it all depends on the coaching staff, and that's a really big burden for Jat and Cold.